Greetings, Biology 490 students. My name is Dave Detman. I'm one of the librarians here at UW-Stevens Point. And this library instruction video is designed to give you a little bit of guidance regarding finding primary sources, secondary sources, all the things you need to meet the research requirements for Dr. Elger's class. This is a 490 class, so you guys very likely have had a lot of experience using library resources, so I'm going to keep this pretty short. But obviously, if you do have questions going forward throughout the course of the semester, coming right to the library homepage and selecting Contact Us will allow you to get in touch with either myself or my colleagues to pose a question via email, over the phone. We have a synchronous chat service where you can ask a question in real time. And we also do library instruction consultation sessions. So we'll sit down with you or you and your group. More likely, we'll Zoom with you or you and your group and make sure that when that experience is done, you have all of the best information you need for whatever project you're working on. Well, I'd like to start with the main search mechanism for finding articles at UWSP, something called Search at UW, a really very revolutionary tool that searches over 95% of the nearly 200 individual databases that we subscribe to. So it's allowing us to cast a very large net into the information ocean, so to speak. I will point out a few individual databases before the end of the video and talk about how those come into play in terms of finding articles. So what we're seeing here resembles something we'll see in just a little bit. General Google searching or Google Scholar searching. We enter a few key terms that describe what we're interested in and run the search. So in this result list, we've got nearly 47,000 different kinds of articles. And what you'll want to focus on, of course, is peer-reviewed articles. You will need to make the determination if they're a primary source or a secondary source. But just by reading the summary, and I'll show a summary in a moment, that's usually enough to let you know what kind of article it is. Obviously, contacting your professor if you have any questions about what sort of article it is a best practice, and librarians can help with that as well. So I'm going to peer review. Before I do the peer review, I'm glad I didn't get too far ahead of myself. I do want to point out this box up on the top left hand side of the screen. Search at UW initially will bring back only full text items, but there's almost 47,000 full text, but there's 58,500 and some that are on this topic that are out there. So there's about 11,000, excuse my math, it's not great, over 10,000 anyway, articles that are not immediately full text, but that we could get for you through an interlibrary loan transaction. And I'll try to find an example of that in just a moment as we go through a couple of screens. But now we can go ahead and limit to peer-reviewed. And I also want to point out the limit to creation date. Obviously, your field, like many, there's advances being made all the time, so something even 15 years old may not be appropriate. So you may want to only look at things in a certain date range. And again, your instructor, your professor can help you determine what might be an acceptable time frame to be working with. But anytime you see download PDF on this main screen, you can go right to the full text. You don't have to do anything at all with what's called the record, which I'll show in a moment. You just go right to the full text. In some cases, you won't see that option for you right in this result list. So here's an instance where we need to actually go to the record to figure out a little bit more about where this article resides in its full text. And so your full text options are always going to be below View It. So in this case, PubMed Central, which we'll see in just a moment briefly, would be where we would be linked to for that full text. In the event that you didn't see any full text options here, interlibrary loan, request a copy from another library would show up and would be your only option. The process at this point would be to sign in and then request the copy. And you don't have to worry about where it is or about going somewhere to get it, we will have it scanned wherever we find it and then made available to you as a PDF in less than 24 hours. So it's definitely a valuable service, very quick, efficient. Don't ever hesitate. There is no cost to it. So please, anything that you need that you don't have immediate access to, Interlibrary Loan is there to make sure that you can connect with those resources. Go back in. A few other things to quickly point out. That summary is very often hiding towards the bottom of the screen. That will tell you again what the contents of the article is, as well as give you an opportunity to determine if it is in full text or not. I just noticed that this one is 1878. Maybe useful from a historical perspective, maybe not for this class. Again, there is that date range built in. So if you want to look at only things in a certain time range. And I do just quickly want to point out the DOI. That's a kind of a fairly new piece of information that goes with articles. It's a digital object identifier. And in most cases, it's encouraged that you include that in your citation. And speaking of citations, Search at UW allows us to generate one right on the fly. So for example, MLA is here, APA, and they've recently undergone an upgrade, which these used to be all kind of jumbled together, but now we've got it. We've got our indentations and we've got double space, and you'll notice here is that DOI. Cut and paste into your works cited page and you're off and running. So I recommend Search at UW as the first place. Again, it's going to give you the most comprehensive access to materials that we pay for. We take a portion of your tuition dollars. So you're going to run into no paywalls here. The worst it could get is an interlibrary loan, couple of clicks, less than 24 hours, you've got that article. All right. Well, speaking of paywalls and other things, which you occasionally run into out on the web, Google Scholar is a resource that we always recommend you search in conjunction with Search at UW. The reason being, one of them is that the algorithm it uses is different. So the articles that it deems as most relevant are a little bit different than what Search at UW is going to deem relevant. So it's useful to see both of those lists. Another reason for searching here is that Google Scholar is considered a hybrid resource, which means it knows a percentage of the full text content that we subscribe to. Not comprehensive, but a percentage. And an important modification you need to make to really maximize the value of Google Scholar from off campus is you need to select this little 3-bar icon and then go into settings and then go into library links and type in University of Wisconsin Stevens Point. Once you designate that as your home library, you're going to be able to take advantage of all of these links off to the right that would not show up unless you designate it as your home library. So essentially what Google Scholar is doing is saying, here's direct links to full text for these articles. In some cases, it might be free. In this case, a government resource that's free. But in many other cases, it will be from something that the library subscribes to that would otherwise be only accessible for a cost. Of course, interlibrary loan is there to make sure you never have to pay for an article. Similar to Search at UW, there is an opportunity to go ahead and limit by date. A few other things to point out. There is a citation feature here as well. It's not as convenient as Search at UW. You do have to make some modifications in terms of how you set that citation up, but it gives you a great start. You're better than having to assemble each piece of information individually. I also want to point out this cited by link. Obviously, if you find a really relevant article for the research you're doing, looking at the works cited page and then tracking things the author used is a good strategy. This would be considered forward citation tracking. So if this article was something that was very relevant, we would also want to click the link and see the 108 other authors that have cited this since its publication in the journal Animal Behavior in 2008. That's an important measure of credibility as well. Typically, the more times something's cited, the more credible it is. The caveat is that it takes a while for citation counts to rise. So something published just a couple years ago may eventually have tremendous impact, but it may only have a few citations. So use that number carefully. Obviously, something from 1983 cited 136. That's still very impressive, but it's been out there a long time compared to something that might only be a couple of years old. Note that there is a direct link in Google Scholar to Web of Science. Web of Science is a database that the library subscribes to. It is accessible through our A to Z list from the library homepage, but you can also go right into Web of Science from Google Scholar. It integrates nicely. And here we have a new list of results. We could go ahead and redo the search if we wanted. Just wanted to point out a couple of those features along the bottom that sometimes get overlooked by researchers who are just looking at the articles themselves. Okay, couple other resources that we want to work with. I'm going to go ahead and go back to library homepage. And I apologize that this isn't tremendously polished, but you guys are getting basically what you would get if we were in a classroom together. Although being in a classroom together, it's easier to feed off of each other's energy. I know this is a whole different kind of approach to teaching and learning, but we're making do. So we've got Search at UW and Google Scholar as places that you really have to go and take a look at. And then we have an opportunity to go through the Find Databases tab off the library's homepage, and we can select biology to generate a list of individual databases that deal in one way or another with that particular subject area. Now remember, Search at UW is covering 95% of this, but sometimes you might want to look at a smaller list as opposed to something that's much larger and interdisciplinary. For example, for my topic, I might just be interested in a small set of highly relevant journals from wildlife and ecology studies worldwide, rather than that big interdisciplinary 47,000 list that I had. So here it will click us to an interface where we can do the same thing we've been doing earlier, just add some keywords and generate that result list. Either you've got immediate full text or you have an opportunity to put in an interlibrary loan transaction. I believe that, no, Web of Science is not listed here on the biology page, but you would be able to get to it from the A to Z list. But again, remember, it's kind of part of searching Google Scholar. You can kind of bounce back between those two resources. The final resource I want to point out is something called PubMed, which is a version of Medline, but in my experiences, it seems to be more comprehensive and comes back with a larger, more relevant result set than Medline does. And similar to Google Scholar, there is an integration between some of our library sources and what PubMed is searching. So here we get a list of resources, of articles, not just articles. What's nice about PubMed is it does give us an opportunity to limit by article type, which is something that Search at UW does not allow. So that might be a reason that a researcher would want to come here in addition to those other two resources. Once you click the title of the article, you'll get an abstract, which is similar to the summary that we saw in Search at UW. And then your full text options will be out to the right-hand side. And in this particular instance, it looks like there's open access through PLOS. There's PubMed Central, which is providing free full text. If there is not full text links out to the right, in almost all cases, you'll see a Find It button. That Find It button should, and it doesn't in this case, I apologize, bad example, should interface with Search at UW to see if we have it in full text somewhere. If you do get cut short in terms of interfacing back to Search at UW, you can always take this citation information and go to the library's homepage and go into Borrow and Request and put in an interlibrary loan request for that article. Again, the Contact Us button is your quickest way to get answers to any questions you have regarding resources that aren't immediately available. So I encourage you to reach out and ask librarians those questions. A few other things here. We've got a site feature, which I haven't really looked at before now, but it is available for you there. So you need, I believe in the end, you're going to need 14 primary, 5 secondary, and 1 tertiary. Very quickly, a tertiary source is essentially a compilation of information about your topic without any significant new analysis. So it's sort of similar to a review article. An encyclopedia or a bibliography would be an example of a tertiary source. Wikipedia itself is actually a tertiary source. It brings together a lot of different sources, but doesn't really extend on any of the research that's been done. But remember, Wikipedia entries have fantastically useful works cited pages at the bottom of the page. So certainly when you're out searching the general web and you're not doing Google Scholar or search at UW or PubMed, just a Google search, be looking for that Wikipedia entry and then link to the resources in that reference page. So that's probably more than you needed. Again, you are a 490 group, very savvy, no doubt, in the art of doing academic research. But again, I want to end with where I started. If you have any questions at all throughout the course of this semester, you're not working in a vacuum. Myself and my colleagues make it our goal every day to help students save time using library resources. So reach out and let us fulfill that goal. Thank you. Have a great semester.